Let's begin with Focus on Health Law. The moderator here is attorney Ramesh Khurana from the Khurana Law Firm. His honored guest is attorney Kenneth Haber. Here on this set, attorney Haber will address the first of a three-part series on Medicare and its developments now and in the future. Let's see.
Good morning. This is Ramesh Khurana, attorney at law. I have a great pleasure in welcoming Kenneth Haber, who is an attorney in Maryland and who is a former assistant U.S. attorney, very experienced and renowned attorney. Now, we will have the pleasure of asking him questions this morning about Medicare and its development, which is now and what do we see in the future. Let me ask you a question, Mr. Haber.
Yes,
now,
sir.
of course, again, I extend you our warm welcome to the studios.
Well, I thank you very much, and I really appreciate being able to be here and appearing before the TV audience and being able to discuss these developments. It's the type of information that's topical because of the invocation of the Health Care Reform Act, the Affordable Care Act, and it's impacting all the areas of our medical practice nowadays.
Yeah, interesting. Now, can you please describe what is currently happening in the healthcare field and what is happening in Medicare in particular?
Well, our national health expenditures have reached astronomical proportions. In 2009, we spent $2.5 trillion on health care. It's estimated by 2020 we're going to be expending $4.6 trillion on health care. We're talking about an increase of 6.3% per year from 2013 to 2020. 95% of our nation's age population, as well as those who are on Social Security disability, are involved in Medicare. You're talking about in 2010, Part A coverage included 47 million people with benefits of $244.5 billion. Part B coverage covered 44 million people with benefits of $209.7 billion.
Wow.
Part D coverage was 34 million, that's the drug coverage, with benefits of $61.7 billion. So there is an astronomical drain upon the economy that Congress is feeling with all these boomers such as myself getting to the booming age. It's affecting Medicare. The government turned around and opened up a floodgate of new recipients, whether you like it or not. With the Affordable Care Act, they took $500 billion from our budget, claiming that they could save it in waste, fraud, and abuse over the next 10 years. There's not $500 billion in waste, fraud, and abuse. What the government is doing is they're squeezing every cent that they can. They're turning the spigots tight, and they're turning the arms of the doctors to the point that doctors are going to undercode in order to avoid getting hit on the head by the government. This is what I recommend to my patients, not my patients, my clients, my doctors, that if in fact a patient comes in, he's got enough problems that can last for 2 visits, instead of trying to cram it into 1 visit if it's not critical, to have 2 visits so that they have 2 level 3s instead of a level 4, because the government's looking at every level 4 billing, looking at it very carefully. So, if it justifies 2 level 3s, then have 2 level 3s. It's better than a single level 4. This is what's happening because of the fact the government's sending people around, agencies around, contractors around, recovery audit contractors to start looking for anything that they can find. They'll throw mud on the walls and see what sticks.
Oh, interesting. So, Ken, if Congress is relying upon the OIG and CMS to identify and reclaim $500 billion in waste, fraud, and abuse, how is that going to play out?
Well, they're squeezing every bit of what they call savings from the system. Doctors who several years ago, may not have crossed their I's and crossed their T's and dotted their I's rather, and would have not thought twice about it, and government would not have thought twice about it. Now they're being audited, and they have to cross their T's and dot their I's. If they don't, somebody's going to come knocking on their door and asking for money back.
So, what are some of the tools that the OIG will use? Can you please describe?
Well, we as a society have placed a tremendous amount of trust in doctors, and most doctors deserve that trust. A few of them, have in fact not acted appropriately, and that resulted in Congress giving a great deal of tools to the OIG and to CMS, the Medicare agency. The OIG being the law enforcement agency that's responsible for the Medicare agency. It's the Office of Inspector General, of which I had the privilege of being associated with back in the late 70s, early 80s as a senior attorney. They have the responsibility of policing it, and there are a substantial number of incidences where there needs to be policing. Unfortunately, these same tools can be turned against innocent doctors in order to squeeze that extra money out of them when they don't deserve it, when they're innocent of wrongdoing, intentional wrongdoing, and they shouldn't have retroactive squeezes put upon them.
Now, Ken, of course, we agree that these federal laws are very complex. Now, having said that, what advice do you give so that these doctors are properly guided and they can understand how to comply with these laws in a better way?
Well, there are certain red flags that the doctors have to be aware of. They have to look closely at their relationship with their payers. They have to look closely at their relationship with fellow physicians, facilities, and providers. And they have to look closely at their relationship with their vendors, because all of these are areas where they can trip up. Their vendors can offer them enticements, which 5 years ago, 10 years ago would have never been thought twice. People wouldn't have crossed their eyes at it. Everyone knows how the drug companies would wine and dine the doctors and take them on seminars and pay them for giving educational programs and things like this. And no one thought twice about it 10 years ago, but nowadays that can land you in jail. Can certainly land you into having to pay all sorts of money back to the government. There are 5 major tools that the government has, plus a variety of other tools. But just in terms of the statutory tools, they got the False Claims Act, the Anti-Kickback Statute, the Physician Self-Referral Statute, the exclusion authorities of the IG's office, and the civil monetary penalties. And the interesting thing about the civil monetary penalties, they're very closely akin to the False Claims Act, but you don't even see a civil judge in U.S. District Court. You just see an administrative law judge, and they can impose draconian penalties upon you. So you have to be very, very careful on how you relate to these various entities that are out there, your payers, your fellow physicians and facilities, and your vendors. Can end up disastrous for you.
Can you talk about several federal laws which are applicable here? Now, in the interest of time, because we are running out of time, I think the most important aspect which I see here is the False Claims Act. Now, can you please tell the viewers, what is the False Claims Act?
The False Claims Act gives the government the opportunity to recapture triple the damages plus $11,000 for each line item that you billed them. So you billed them one patient for 5 services, and if they could show that it's false, they get 5 times 11, $55,000 back from you, plus maybe $55 times 3, triple damages. So the fact of the matter, that's assuming it was a $5 visit. The fact of the matter is it's a draconian statute. It goes back to the Civil War days. It's both criminal and civil in its application. So you got to be careful of that.
Very draconian statute. I really agree with you. Now, while we are talking about Medicare and its developments now in the future, now would you like to say a last word on this issue? We have just 2 more minutes.
Well, one of the things to remember about the False Claims Act, it takes no specific intent to defraud. You can be convicted for reckless disregard of the truth. You can be convicted for deliberate ignorance, and that's criminally, let alone civilly. So you got to check everything out. You've got to make sure that you have documentation of checking everything out, and you need to consult with attorneys, good, competent attorneys, to check things out so you make sure that you're not violating the law. There was just a recent Sixth Circuit case that got a reversal for a person on certain counts because of the fact that they had checked with their attorneys, and there was documentation that they tried to find out what was the truth in some complicated areas of law. And this resulted in reversal of their convictions. They were convicted on other counts, and those stood, but it just shows you how complicated the law is when the attorneys are not able to properly advise their clients.
Thank you very much, Ken, for coming to our studios. I really thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I am really pleased that we have started Saturday's segment with the renowned attorney Ken Haber, now who has got plenty of knowledge and experience about these issues which are very close to the heart of physicians. But of course, our advice to all our viewers is whenever you have some legal issues, please talk to a competent lawyer so that you are guided properly. Again, thank you very much.
Well, thank you.